There's always more to a story than it will initially seem. The other day, I saw this posted on r/Linux. Ubuntu 23.10 potentially dropping LibreOffice and Thunderbird from its default install. Now initially, this sounds kinda bad. It sounds kinda similar to the Fedora situation where Red Hat was dropping support for the LibreOffice RPM, and a lot of the people in the comments were saying, "This is terrible, this is awful, I'm gonna find a new distro, Ubuntu is dead." But this is only a small part of the whole discussion. Rethinking Ubuntu Desktop, a more thoughtful default installation. This has seen a bit of coverage from OMG Ubuntu and also posted on this subreddit, but I don't think most people realize this discussion is even happening. And while there is certainly some criticism of the way they're going about it and the things they want to include, I don't think doing this is inherently a bad idea. Today, I'd like to discuss a significant shift in our approach to Ubuntu Desktop's minimal and full installation options. Nowadays, most people are used to these options existing, but minimal was only added in 1804. Like, this is a really recent addition. Whilst people are used to these options, I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to rethink them. If you've installed Ubuntu Desktop before, you're likely familiar with the minimal and full options in our installer. On closer inspection, you might wonder why certain packages are included and others aren't. For those seeking a lean system, the full installation might seem bloated. Conversely, if you're looking for a sleek, complete experience, the minimal installation might feel a bit bare. Honestly, I feel like the Ubuntu minimal installation still has way too much in it. When I see a minimal installation, I would generally expect something more akin to a server installation. No desktop, none of these applications you don't need, basically just a system that boots with a package manager. But I know that's not what they're trying to go for. But the next thing hits on the main point. Clearly, neither option perfectly suits the varied needs of our users. Tweaking the packages in the full and minimal configurations isn't the answer. We shouldn't focus on the quantity of packages, but rather on meeting user requirements, like simplifying installation and reducing the time it takes for users to go from installation to productivity. Whilst a lot of us in the Arch world and the Gentoo world and the Void world and distros like this like to tweak our systems, a lot of people out there are just trying to install Linux and then get work done. The configuring your system part, that isn't part of the work they want to be doing. But with preset options, there's only so much that can really be done there. You'll never meet the needs of every single user. You can meet the needs of most users. Most users need a web browser. They need a text editor. They need a file manager. But what about an IDE? What about Steam? What about an email client? What about a document suite? You can probably say that most people need them, but there's going to be a lot of users out there that'll never touch those applications. And some people are going to need some of them, but not the others. And then other people might need a different subset of those applications. And no matter what you do, there is always going to be these people that aren't having their needs exactly met. It's Linux. Everything can be tweaked post-install later down the line, but wouldn't it be nice to have a really solid baseline? In view of this, we're planning to replace these not quite right options with a single unified configuration. For extra applications, we plan to rely on a polished App Store experience to enable users to easily add what they need. More details on the App Store will follow soon. With widespread internet access today, obtaining the necessary apps is no longer a hurdle. This is the case if we're talking about Australia, the United States, most of Europe. But there are places like India and Nigeria which absolutely do have people that are online with a consistent connection. But there is a lot of people there that still don't have consistent internet access. And in their cases, having a full installation with all of the applications you could typically need is a much better thing than potentially having to travel to a location where you have a consistent connection. There is enough people out there that could benefit from the full option that they probably shouldn't get rid of it. But that seems like the direction we're going. This streamlined approach could reduce ISO size, decrease testing needs, and simplify the installation process. I think if they're going to reduce ISO size, please just put full as like a separate ISO. Obviously, that's not going to deal with this issue, but it is also going to simplify the installation. What's not being defined in this first post is what this unified installation could look like. In a further post, he does go and define that. A few notes from my perspective. My feeling is that the default install should be slim. I'm avoiding minimal because there are packages in minimal that we may want to remove, i.e. game mode. I actually agree with him that the term minimal doesn't really make sense. As I said earlier, I think minimal should mean a server install, not a slim version of Ubuntu that doesn't have all of the same packages. And similarly, there are packages that one could argue should be included as it completes the out-of-box experience, i.e. GNOME clocks. This is basically a stopwatch and alarm application. Maybe somebody needs that, but for me, I generally just use my phone, and if I'm going to do it on my computer, there's plenty of websites with that functionality. There are users who don't interact with the installer at all. For example, those who purchase pre-installed Ubuntu laptops. So if you buy an Ubuntu laptop, you don't choose whether it's going to be a full or a minimum installation. You don't choose any of the extra software they might choose to include. You just get whatever is sold to you. There's no plans to have users select apps during the installation process. In fact, I'm recommending the opposite. Let's reduce complexity with reasonable defaults and rely on better app discovery once the user is logged into their desktop. Honestly, I think this would be really nice to have. Maybe as like an advanced option. So if you want to go and just tick, I want Steam installed, I want this installed, I want that installed, but I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this, I can just get rid of it. I think that would be really nice to have, and maybe some way to automate the process for somebody who wants to install a fleet of Ubuntu. The next one, I don't think anybody can disagree with. If someone tries to open file.xyz and no installed application supports that type, then we should recommend ones that do. I don't think this is something the installer should try to solve. So if you try to open up a docx file and for whatever reason you don't have a document suite installed, it should recommend something like LibreOffice. This would be a really nice thing to have. I could see it being an issue with weird esoteric file types or file types that double up with the same naming, but for general file types that most people are going to come across, that is just a nice addition. From this discussion and others I've had, I see a range of opinions on the matter. Ultimately, we want to enable personalized desktops, and I don't think a great solution can be found in the installer alone. I'd like to see a solid base and then make personalization straightforward. In time, this also means tooling to allow for backup/recovery of your personalized setup. But now I'm speculating way ahead. In the original post, he did say something else to this as well. Further down the road, we could offer app bundles, curated experiences, or even the possibility for users to provide their own list of apps. This could open up greater customization options. In fact, adventurous users can already do a lot with tools like auto install and Ubuntu image. Now, as for the list of applications, since I have a captive audience, I like to focus this discussion and propose a strawman user-facing applications list for this slim install. Now, obviously, there's going to be systemd installed, there's going to be the GNU core utils, but this is the things that most users are going to be interacting with. This list is mostly fine, but there are some really obvious things that are missing. Obviously, LibreOffice is missing. Now, maybe I'll get some hate for this, but I don't think most people need LibreOffice installed. If you're using Linux for work or you're using it for school, totally understand. But a lot of people using it for work are probably getting documents in some sort of online cloud solution anyway. And for the regular user who's just a Linux hobbyist, they're not using it for anything productive. When was the last time you needed to open up a document? I think you could argue LibreOffice both ways. I have it installed because I just have a lot of storage space, but if the goal is to reduce the ISO size, that's probably one of the things you could remove. Now, another thing missing is an email client. This is why Thunderbird is no longer there. I like Thunderbird myself. Thunderbird is my email client, but I know a lot of people out there make use of Evolution and other clients, and a lot of people don't use a standalone client, instead using the web service of their provider. I would assume most people are probably using the web service. A bigger problem is the lack of a video player, which doubles as an audio player as well. Now, technically, Firefox is gonna play these videos and play this audio just fine. But do you want to open up a web browser every time you want to watch a local video? I don't. It seems like a lot of performance overhead without really any benefit. I usually use my web browser as a PDF reader because a lot of PDF readers are really heavy anyway, but a video player is generally pretty light. Even one of the really featureful solutions like VLC, that is so much lighter than a web browser. I saw another user suggesting applications like Shotwell and SimpleScan. Shotwell is basically a photo manager that also includes some basic photo manipulation like cropping, rotation, color enhancement, and things like that. That is certainly a nice to have, but I don't think most people are going to be using that. SimpleScan, on the other hand, I think you could make the argument that every so often, you're gonna need to scan some sort of document. You like maybe your driver's license to send to some government agency, or you'll need to print some sort of document. I think in that case, yeah, you could probably say it should be included. Whilst I don't have an issue with rethinking the Ubuntu desktop, I do think a list like this is a little bit too slim. I know the idea is to rely on the software store and rely on recommendations and users picking and choosing all of the applications they want, the install by default just being really, really slim. But the whole thing about Ubuntu is it's this complete experience. You install Ubuntu and you're pretty much ready to go, minus any business-specific software you might need, like you need a specific IDE, you need a game engine, you need Steam installed to do some gaming, things like that. I think if they go with a list this slim, it may do a lot more harm than good. This comment sums it up really well. I see two cases who may be impacted negatively, and some design work outside of the installer seems to be in order. Non-technical users, the historic target of the desktop installer. They are quiet, but they greatly outnumber us when something goes wrong. Oh, I tried Ubuntu, but I couldn't open Jeff's wedding invitation. It just didn't work. We can patiently explain that that wasn't an error message, it was an offer to install LibreOffice, but they won't care. They expected X, they got Y was too confusing, and they threw it away. You could say, skill issue. And yes, it is, but regular people don't want to need skill for their computer. They just want it to do the computer thing and not think about it. And secondly, are the offline users. We're seeing a lot of these over in Ask Ubuntu. Ubuntu seems popular in, for example, air-gapped secure networks. Desktop is popular because it's complete for their workflow. A similar case can be said for the people who don't have consistent internet access. Whilst this thread started a month ago, it is still actively being discussed as of about 11 hours ago. Nothing here is set in stone, and things are still absolutely up for change. If you don't think this is a good idea, and you maybe have an idea about a different way it can go, do get involved with this discussion and provide your feedback. Maybe 23.10 will still be Ubuntu as we know today, but maybe 24.04 or 24.10, then we'll start seeing a shift into a new direction. I'm really curious to see how that's going to go, and if they do go with a very slim approach, what sort of effect that is going to have on the users of Ubuntu. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you liked the video, go like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, Scribes, the LibrePay linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, maybe it's Maybelline.
Something like this.